All right, we're starting to transition right on over into Just Talking, where our guest is Alexander Titus. He's a technology executive, he's a millennial, and the chief strategy officer at the Advanced Regenerative Manufacturing Institute, which is known as ARMY. And he was previously the first head of the Biotechnology Modernization at the Department of Defense. Wow, that is such a tongue twister right there. How's it going, my friend?
Oh, it's good to be here, man. Yeah, it's quite a mouthful, I can imagine.
It really is. And my first thing I got to ask you is, what does a data scientist even do? Yeah, you work at Weight Watchers on your side. No, just kidding.
Yeah,
what does a data scientist do?
So, I mean, really, you could take it to Weight Watchers, things like that. So there's all kinds of stuff. So how does Weight Watchers decide how to make recommendations for their programs? They look at how the data of all of their members are doing and then see which of their recommendations are helping their members lose more weight and use that to inform the next recommendations. So that's what a data scientist is. You collect a bunch of data, or you get someone else to do it, and you try to find interesting shit in it.
Well, let me ask you this, because would my skills apply back from my MySpace era? Because I used to be a pretty good coder back then. Would my MySpace skills be able to qualify myself to be a data scientist?
So, and really, there's the coders, which is, computer scientists, the hackers. Data scientists are really more statisticians. Kind of the old school statisticians turn new school. Kind of the millennial version of stats is data science.
Okay, real quickly though. All right, is it data or data?
Yeah. Ooh,
that's a good point, Marissa.
Which one is it?
I'm on the data side, but
yeah, who said data?
Is that like a West Coast, East Coast thing? Because I'm data, right? You're data.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know.
See, how is it that we have data scientists who operate Google and Google still can't figure out how to say data or data scientist, and we still don't even know how to say Jeff Bezos' last name? What is going on? How can we trust technology in these times?
Oh, man. Yep. That's good. I actually used to work at Amazon too, so I'll get into that.
Oh, that's wild. So if you did work at Amazon, as an employee, what were you told to call him by his last name?
No one ever said, yo, just talk. They just said, hey, talk to Jeff. Give him a call.
It wasn't like almighty.
I think that's the safe word of saying, don't even try to attempt.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, sure. You can call him Jeff, whatever. You could try.
It's not Jeff, the almighty God of your packages.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. The one-way system that we all love, that us millennials are so heavily invested on. But I mean, I know at one point in time, you were working at the Pentagon before the whole coronavirus started to unravel. Was there anything that the Pentagon was telling you before this kind of outbreak was starting to come into effect?
I mean, the government's always monitoring and trying to figure out what's the best way to intervene or not intervene. So we had lots of conversations, because I'm also in the biology space. So lots of my colleagues are using that data skills to look at all the epidemiology and all the cases and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there was lots of talk, but it's as Marissa said, it's hard to predict what's going on. And so it was a lot of sit and wait.
Well, if you had a lot of talks about it, were you guys informed about any kind of outbreak happening, let's say before the Wuhan break happened?
I wasn't in particular, but someone might have.
Did you have a weird sense in the building? I mean, I'm sure there's got to be like something that creeps in the whole Pentagon, that when one department feels a little unease, everybody starts to feel unease. Did you start to get that kind of feeling? Be real, come on. I mean,
you could, but unfortunately, there's a lot of unease from a lot of angles, so you couldn't tell if it was COVID or something else. It's just a weird place to work.
So the Pentagon is not an easy place to work at, and I know you've advocated, for more millennials to actually start to step up and join, these public services. And why is that?
I mean, we're now, the millennial age is now the generation that is in that age of being leaders. And so as technology's changing, and Marissa is an actor and can't use technology worth a damn, but most of us can.
You're already getting called out already. He's like, he's less than 5 minutes in and you're already getting slammed.
I saw last week's show.
yeah, right. We're
The Pentagon. I'm gonna just say the Pentagon tried to stop us. Okay, that's the main reason. Yeah. Because I mean, that's the sad part, right? I mean, you're watching the news, you're watching the media constantly. They're always trying to talk for us as if we're a piece of recycled news, and we never have our forefront. So I think it's so crazy, and especially when I hear that you're advocating for people to leave a Pentagon job. I was kind of alarmed at first because I said, wow, that feels like one of the best final stages. Like you don't want to leave there, like once you get there.
I mean, it was awesome, but it just, what I'm always trying to do is say, public service is huge. We need more people with new ideas that are part of the new world, right? Not just technology, social norms change. We need to make sure that we are always improving. I mean, the current climate right now is showing that we seriously need to make some change.
And I always wanted to ask this from somebody who's worked at the Pentagon. Have you ever been in the section of the building where we actually got hit during 9/11? Have you ever been there?
Yeah.
Well, how does it feel for the first time walking in that area? I really don't know. I mean, I'm always speechless thinking about it.
It's crazy, scary, humbling. There's actually a plaque and a monument there to commemorate everything that was going on. I think one of the things that the Pentagon really teaches you is just the scope of kind of how humble you feel relative to how big global problems can be, and how when you the Pentagon has 25,000 people in it working in it every day. So any one person, aside from maybe the Secretary of Defense themselves, doesn't have a huge impact. But when you put 25,000 people plus everyone else who works around that together, then you actually start to have an impact.
Okay, real quickly, to put to rest a lot of conspiracy theories that the Pentagon didn't get hit. Could you see new construction done on the walls, or did it look exactly the same?
It looks exactly the same. They're good.
Wow.
Conspiracy theories
I know, but I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah, right.
But the room with the aliens is really cool.
Oh, say that again. We lost you a little bit.
I said the room with the aliens is really cool.
Oh, now you just really sparked a bubble with Marissa Pitts. I had no idea that the Pentagon, we've been looking in the wrong state this whole time.
The Pentagon has the aliens. Of course they do. Have you not seen Men in Black? Men in Black specifically has it. So in the Pentagon, there's the aliens.
Well, I think this is a great transition to my next question, because if I'm reading this correctly, you were the first head of biotechnology modernization at the Department of Defense. What does that even mean?
Yeah, that people ask that all the time. Really, what it means is that the Pentagon recognizes, the DoD recognizes that they need to upgrade their thinking when it comes to tech, and so that's what Make It Modern means, modernization. And so I was responsible for understanding all the things that were going on and recommending how we were supposed to go. And actually, one of the cool things was, of course, as a millennial, I was quite a bit younger than a lot of my peers. And when I was having the conversation about, why do you want me to do this? Someone said, because the technology you're looking into didn't exist when most of these people trained. Right? Most of these people trained in the Cold War, and biotech wasn't as big of a thing back then. So they
had a floppy disk with 3 megabytes on it, and they say, "Hey, go transfer this document to the next computer."
And for listeners who might not know what biotech is, what is that?
Biotech is using biology to do cool stuff. So a great example that I've always given to people is, so there's a company that's actually using biotech, so microbes, like the same thing you'd have in yeast or bacteria or something, and using it to grow bricks. So you can actually create these bricks, which are normal bricks, but you can grow them and build with them. And one of the things that the DoD is trying to do is build growable runways. So you spray this material down and it actually grows the concrete. It's pretty dope.
I remember 2 months ago, I say, everybody calm down. It's just the coronavirus. We're not living in WESTWORLD. Well, I retract everything I say. Now that I'm hearing this, what is going on?
2020 is definitely the beginning of WESTWORLD. Let me tell you.
It's starting to seem like
happening. It's all downhill.
Yeah, because do you guys start to create like creative tissue, like human skin, or is it more of just like on the mechanical building stage? Is that really where they see it going? Because I guess when I was thinking about Department of Defense, I kind of thought like when someone gets shot in war, they were gonna have some crazy thing. I don't know. This is just my imagination
that's
flying.
the thing that's crazy about it. It's everything. So right now, where I work, Army, the Advanced Regenerative Manufacturing Institute, we're focused on making the manufacturing of tissues and organs a reality.
Wow.
Right? If you think about how many people every year die because they need an organ transplant and they can't, well, the DoD, so the DoD is a big funder of this, has so many warfighters that get injured. You seriously wounded and you need to replace something, whether anything from a torn ACL to whole organs. So that's really the vision.
Yeah,
that
that's
is
pretty
so
cool.
exciting. That is so exciting to hear.
It's crazy.
And I mean, I'm sure scientists, they always got to have a reach end, right? And when do you guys think that we can make this kind of thing happen? At least in our nation. I mean, is there like a time frame that you guys are trying to hit?
So everything depends on what type of organ you're looking for. So some organs like kidneys are really complex, but other things like skin and ligaments are much less complex. So we're already having the ability to produce ligaments and skin replacements. So the challenge right now is doing it enough so you could help a lot more people. So you can do anything at a really small scale, but doing it large scale is the hard part.
So we're in the very early stages, I guess what you're trying to say. Very early.
It's been around for a while, but it's right now just starting to take off.
Wow.
Nice. So
That's
exciting.
insane. I'm getting beyond stoked for the future now, as much as 2020 is
man.
looking like a shit show.
Alexander,
That gets me stoked.
Alexander, will you design some biotech wings for me? I always want to fly.
We could probably come up with some normal tech wings first, and then we'll try that.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll get the bio in there. Yeah, we can do that.
Versus like, I don't know if I support this anymore.
I want bio fairy wings. I want to fly.
I'm thinking more like dragon wings, but fairy wings work too.
Well, we got to get into this because you wrote an article in The Hill that started a firestorm. I mean, and it really was just advocating for millennials to leave their Silicon Valley jobs for public service. And I really want to give you that forum to speak on that, because why? I mean, why should someone want to leave such a luxury job at Silicon Valley here in my state of California, get all those pretty luxuries? Why should the millennial settle for something else?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. That's what everyone asks. So to be fair, I used to be one of those Silicon Valley jobs and made the transition. And so that's why I'm related to it. And the challenge is we see it also right now. There's a huge amount of unrest because millennials are recognizing that the situation is not the way we want it to be. And so instead of sitting there, and so I even titled it, Stop Throwing Rocks at the Castle. Instead of sitting in your really comfy job and tweeting about how you guys just had this conversation about sharing things online, tweeting about it. But if that's all you ever do, then that's not really making a difference. It's reaching out to that colleague if we're talking about the Black Lives Matter movement and actually making a difference with your friends. Or if you want the government to change in some way, right? If you don't like how the government's operating, it's a lot harder to just sit there and complain than it is to go make a difference.
Yeah. I always tell people, and that comes down to voting. It is our constitutional right. People have died from it. A lot of Black people have died to get their right to vote. And if you have a change, go use your voice, go vote. Otherwise, I don't want to see the complaints on Facebook. And you know what I mean? If you don't like it, understandable. Let's make a change. Let's use what our tools we have at hand. Yes,
100%. But what I was also trying to say is voting is one route that we talk about, but the vast majority, I'm making this number up, but I would say 90+% of people in the government, of whether you're at the city government or state government or federal government, are not elected. So you can do that change, but you can also go take one of those jobs for a period of time and actually affect change yourself, not just our elected officials, because yes, they sway some things, but they don't sway everything. And in reality, it's the people who work in the government who are going to do the day-to-day and help make those decisions. We need a lot more of them, or not more of them, but we need now to change of the guard, if you will. And as millennials get to the age where real leadership positions are available to us, we have to do that. And then that's how you affect change. You vote for the leaders on the Hill, and then the top dogs in other spots. But then all of the people like in the executive branch of the government, they're not elected officials. So
That's
we
a
want to
trip.
back
I
there.
totally forgot all about that. Honestly, I
Yeah.
get so focused on the voting and who I'm seeing as a public figure versus just the everyday 9-to-5er who
Yeah.
is actually making these changes.
Yeah.
And
Going
we're there
out
a lot longer usually. Aside from people in Congress, the elected official, the president's only there for 8 years at most. All of their appointees are only there for the odd amount of time, but you have people in government who are there for their careers. So over the course of a 30-year career, you could make a huge change, or you could go for a stint. Not everyone wants to leave, the private sector or academia or whatever. Go for a couple years and just understand what it takes, because
Well,
then it's also
Marissa,
easier to recommend.
Well, I want to play you a soundbite that we have here. This was actually from the University of California president speaking up, the CSU chancellor here at our state, and the California community chancellor, all disagreeing with millennials about advocating for a gap year coming up into the fall semester. So let's play the soundbite.
Our students have to ask themselves, well, what's the gap year for? And I would highly recommend that students stay enrolled and keep making progress toward their degrees.
Going into the virtual space for a semester or two is a small alteration, adaptation that's necessary to deal with this global pandemic.
To stay enrolled, to seek enrollment, and to have that opportunity to, really be in a position to do well in whatever economy transpires after this crisis is over.
See, I've always been kind of, I don't really know how to feel about this kind of situation, because I've always told even my parents on a level, like, if I never finished undergrad and I didn't go to graduate school right away, I feel like I would have never gone back to school. And actually, you told me something pretty interesting over the weekend that I had no idea, that you actually did a gap year. How long was it for?
So I took 2 separate 1-year periods off.
Wow.
2 different gap years, both after college, before grad school.
And you got a PhD, right?
I did after both of those.
Let's remind all the listeners out there, that's insane, right?
So I had that same concern when I was an undergrad, and I asked my advisor, one of the wisest people I've ever met. I said, if I don't go to grad school right now, I never will. And she said, good, then you never should have.
Ooh.
Thank you.
Ooh.
It's like if
That seems kind of a little blunt, though. I mean, gosh.
But people go to grad school because they don't know what else to do. But in reality, the people, so similar to your thinking that 90% of people who, all those quotes, stats.
Yeah, the Gap Year Association.
The people are more successful, or a higher percentage of people are successful when they go back because they wanted to. So by taking a gap year after high school, the people who probably would never have done, enjoyed college, and there's plenty of other routes that are not just college. We push college as the only education route, but there's so many. We have a huge need for electricians and plumbers and iron workers and the trades, which are very high paying, very high skilled jobs that we don't value as much. And so when people have a time to think, then they realize they can figure out exactly what they want. And so that's what her point was. If you then have a burning desire to go back, that's why you should go to grad school, or
right,
any other type of school, because otherwise you're just you may just be going through the motions, which it doesn't do anyone any service.
Yep, I have to agree with you. I took 7 years in community college, taking every class under the sun because I had no idea what I wanted to do. After that, jumped into my 4-year for the 2 years, knocked it out because I'm an actor I knew, and then I went and professionally acted. I didn't jump into grad school right away. I was like, you know what? First off, I'm done with school. Let me do that. And then I wanted to relearn my passion again.
Yeah.
And my experience is totally different than a lot of other of my grad students. My grad colleagues, and cohorts, because they came in straight from a 4-year, afraid if they never did it, they wouldn't. Everybody's path is different.
Well,
right?
I think the best way to view gap year, especially since how I'm hearing from both of you that have done gap years, it's like, Michael Jordan, for example, right? I mean, he took a gap year to focus on himself from the tragedy of his father's death, and he wanted to experience playing for the Chicago White Sox. He came back and won a 3-peat. So if Michael Jordan can do it, and Alexander Titus and Marissa Pitts can do it, you can too.
I think the biggest thing is there's 2 things. One, there's no rules to how you have to do it. You should decide how you do it based on your life situation. But 2, when those recommendations for those chancellors and stuff, you got to think of where recommendations come from. Their schools are hurting for revenue from tuition. So they have every incentive to get those students to come back. So just like you guys and your readers, right, or your listeners, you have every incentive to get people to listen to you again and say, oh, that radio show sucks. They won't do your TLDR. We'll do it for you. Come on, we'll make your life easy. Right? We'll have interesting people to talk to.
And it's true because I lost both of my adjunct teaching jobs at universities for fall simply because there is not going to be enrollment.
Yeah. So yes, people, if school's the right route, then you should go to school. But if you have another option, which one option might be, living with, this is the best time for it to live with your parents, right? It's okay right now to live with your parents. No one's going to think you're a loser. There's a global pandemic.
I've been saying that for so long. Where do you think this is all at? I mean, luckily I've been able to go to undergrad and grad school from the support of Sally and Kevin Collins. They are the best parents in the world. And I literally want to be in this position today to have the Chris Collins Show Millennial Talk Show. Without, not, if I wasn't living at my parents' house, this honestly probably wouldn't have gone into effect.
If anything, if all this time has shown us is we have to reevaluate what we consider the rules. There's the norms of social engagement where we have kind of systemic racism. There's the norms of how people are supposed to progress through life. There's the norms of everything around, and all of it needs to be reevaluated and make sure that they still apply.
Yeah, and what about the norm of just idolizing the select few in office? Like I know millennials are constantly just focused on the few, and that's one thing you did touch upon on your Hill article. And were you talking about people like the Squad or Greta Thunberg or Ocasio-Cortez? Is that who you're referring to? Because that's immediately who I thought.
Yeah, it's exactly. And I think that you should have mentors or heroes that are your elected officials, that we should look up to our elected officials, but that's not enough, right? Because the elected officials are only as good as what's their incentive to stay in office. So we have, that's why I was saying, take action, go join your local city works or state works or federal government for a little bit of time and understand what it takes to actually make change in government, because it's not all from the top.
Have you taken the time to check out Steve Carell's new Space Force?
I have.
Did you not notice that reference of Ocasio-Cortez in clear daylight, making fun of millennials, saying like, I thought that was the perfect representation. I easily thought about your article all over again when I saw this and going,
I also love that show. And it's a little painful to watch for me because it's like watching Silicon Valley if you're from Silicon Valley, because it's so real. Like those meetings, so, like, of course it's a hyperbole and it's over exaggerated, but like the same kind of crap, you got to deal with that. Yeah, it's pretty. You'd be surprised about how close it can get to reality.
If you can name a scene, from Space Force so far that you felt like closely related to your time in, let's say, the Pentagon, what scene would that be?
I think it would be the scene where they're. Spoiler alert, the scene where they're trying to fix the satellite with the monkey and the dog.
No, really? Out of all the episodes, you think the episode 2 is the closest to how the Pentagon talks?
Because it's just like, if we have a problem, we need to try every possible solution. So one, that was being funny, but it's true. Like
that was the funniest episode I've ever seen in my life.
But it's like, we have to solve this problem. We will solve it at all costs.
Wow.
Even if it takes a monkey in a spacesuit.
That's kind of alarming for you to say that, actually, because I get that we want to try all routes, but man, people will literally shout out to the extreme, I guess, what they want to have happen in the Pentagon, I guess. Wow.
Yeah. Well, but it's a good thing too, because if there is a dire situation, you have to fix it. You got to solve it at all costs.
That's true.
Anything and everything.
Whether it's a monkey or dog, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Whether it's a monkey or dog in space. I remember my dad always telling me for the longest time he cried so hard when they sent that monkey up and he wanted it to come back down. But Alexander Titus, you've been fabulous, my friend. And where can the listeners follow you on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Alexander Titus. Join the conversation.
And
Follow
also,
him. He has great stuff, outdoor sports. He's a great person. Definitely follow.
well, you got a really cool blog that you just started up called Titus Talk, which I'm a big fan of and I'm a subscriber of. So if any millennials out there that need some of that data scientist or data, sorry, I'm butchering it now. Google's not helping me. I don't got Siri here, but check it out. It's called Titus Talks. And Alexander Titus, thank you so much for joining the Chris Collins Show, Millennial Talk Show.